morning and welcome to Divorce and Finances, the voice of the CDFA. I'm Carol Lee Roberts, the president of the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts. And joining us today is Jason Llewellyn. He is one of our new board members and wanted to give him a chance to introduce himself and talk a little bit about his practice. Jason?
Good morning. As Carol said, I'm Jason Llewellyn. I'm based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I've been a CDFA for, I think, going on about 13 or 14 years now. I started my career in a public accounting firm doing tax work, and probably, I would say 3 years in, had the opportunity to join a partner and start an investment advisory practice within that CPA firm for the Indianapolis office, and did tax work during tax season, did advisory work after I got my Series 65, kind of in the off season. And then as time went on, found that I really enjoyed the advisory side of the business, better than the compliance side of the business doing tax work. So, my experience in the tax side, I think, was still very valuable and still use a lot of that today with what we do in our practice from a CDFA standpoint. So we did that, and we're at the CPA firm for about 10 years doing tax and advisory work. Then we moved on to a brokerage house, worked there for about 7 years, and then broke off and started our own firm. And we've been doing that for about 8 years now. So getting into the CDFA world and kind of what led to that is when we were at the CPA firm, there was a valuation practice that was in our office, and they did a lot of valuation work for higher net worth divorce cases. And the partner that was in charge of the valuation department said, you guys should really think about focusing more on the divorce side. There's such a need for that, and there's really nobody out there doing it from a financial standpoint. So with that, we were fortunate enough to be able to be introduced to quite a few divorce attorneys and points of contact around the Indianapolis area to start being able to do that and work in the divorce field. And then we found the CDFA designation, and it made sense to go ahead and work on obtaining that designation because it really solidified what we were doing, with our clients.
You mentioned dealing with the attorneys in your area, and one of the things I found interesting in your bio is that you're now very active with providing the continuing legal education for attorneys in your area. Can you talk a little bit about what programs you do, how you started marketing to attorneys that way?
Sure. So, as I said, when we were at the CPA firm, that really gave us the introduction to a lot of these attorneys, because anybody that has a CDFA that's tried to break into the attorney world, it's not an easy task. It takes time. It is a very tight-knit group, and they don't answer the call to anybody that calls saying, hey, I can help you. So getting into that group is very, very challenging, but once you do, it's very rewarding as well. So with what we were doing, and we kind of had a foot in the door because of working in the CPA firm and working with this partner who had a lot of established relationships. So we were able to kind of piggyback on those relationships and make our own relationships at the same time. So that kind of led into, okay, these guys are legit. They're CPAs. They have the CDFA, which a lot of the attorneys didn't understand what that designation was at the time. So it was education to them as well, as far as what this designation means. But they were obviously familiar with the CPA designation. So we were able to come in and really provide comprehensive financial advice from the divorce standpoint to the attorney groups and their clients, with going through divorce. So that really led then into us being asked by the Indiana Continuing Legal Education Forum, the Indianapolis Bar Association, different groups. Hey, would you want to come in and present, to groups of attorneys around the financial aspects of divorce. So with that, we were able to get our foot in the door, put some presentations together about the just different divorce financial topics, whether it's tax implications or Social Security, or just different aspects that we see really every day in divorce, and be able to get in front of these large audiences and present those topics to them. So we've been doing that for probably 15 plus years now, at different points during the year. There's an annual conference in Indianapolis, the annual family law conference. We presented that about every other year. And then there's just one-off conferences that they have as well that we've been fortunate enough to be able to present at and inform attorneys and really get our name out and market at the same time.
One of the questions we receive a lot at IDFA is why anyone would choose to work with people going through divorce, since it's so fraught with emotion. And as we've been doing this podcast for over a year now, we keep finding that the financial professionals involved actually find it's very satisfying work, and it's not weighing in the middle of War of the Roses. Would you like to talk about your experiences?
That's absolutely right. I mean, it is very satisfying because you're helping someone through a pretty difficult time. And I would say 9 times out of 10, we're working with a non-moneyed spouse. And typically that individual isn't as familiar with the finances, isn't as familiar about what's going on. So having somebody in their corner that is well versed on the financial sides of this really not only protects them, but gives them the power to feel like they can go into mediation and really advocate for themselves, with what they want to come out of the divorce with. So from that standpoint, it is very satisfying.
It's funny. Years ago at CFP board, they had done studies on who gets their CFP designation. And the big career changers that pursued the CFP designation were pilots, dentists, and teachers. And pilots, I think, because you age out at a certain time, dentists, because it's supposed to be a very frustrating profession and typically has one of the higher rates of suicide. But teachers, I think, because so much of what we do as financial professionals is actually education.
Mm-hmm.
We take the time to learn about this, but we also spend a lot of our time educating our clients about their financial resources. When you first started working with divorcing clients, what did you find most commonly were some of the either questions they had or some of the value you could bring to the process with your background?
Yeah, the questions are really all over the board, just depending on the complexity of the case. It can be as complex as stock options, and what do we do with these grants, and how do we split these, and what's the tax effect of looking like if we do this versus if we do this. And that's one of the things I think differentiates us from a lot of our competitors, is just having the tax background and having the whole piece where we can kind of consult on all of it at once, and we're not having to bring 3, 4, 5 different people in to be able to provide guidance on certain situations. So that part I think is good. But from a where we can provide value standpoint, I think that really is where the value proposition with our firm comes in. It's just, and being a CDFA in general, is just being able to provide sound guidance, advice, regarding the splitting of marital assets and how that looks on paper right now, but then how that's going to play out in the future for what future income streams look like, and how that individual is going to be able to live their life moving forward, from a financial standpoint. And sometimes it looks pretty good, and other times it's not as rosy of a picture. And being able to illustrate that for our client, that hey, you haven't worked in 15 years, but unfortunately, based on where your marital estate is today and what you're going to walk away with, we should probably start looking at you finding employment moving forward, because the fact that what you're going to have isn't going to last if you don't have something to add to that moving forward down the road.
So if you were to look back to, say, the first year you had your CDFA designation, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Wow, that's a good question. I think if I would have known then, how important maintaining and nurturing the relationships with our referral base would be. That's the key to where a lot of our new clients are coming from. We don't do a ton of outside advertising, and maybe that's a fault of ours. We don't do a lot of web advertising and print advertising or radios or billboards or anything like that. We focus our time and energy and money on nurturing the attorneys that refer clients to us. So I think just knowing that, and that's kind of the Indianapolis base. Other cities could be different. Other cities, you may have more success trying to market directly to the end user, which is the client, rather than the attorney. But 9 times out of 10, when an attorney refers somebody over to us, it's a good lead and it's a good relationship out of the gate. Whereas if we get a cold call or somebody sees our website, it's more of they're kind of kicking the tires, wanting to interview us. It's not as solid of a lead as it would be as if it came directly from an attorney. And the attorneys understand that we're not going to disrupt the case. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that advisors, CDFAs, financial professionals have with getting in with attorneys, is they're afraid that we're going to come in and pound our fist on the table and no, we want this, we want that, and we're going to really disrupt the flow of the case, which is going to make their job a lot tougher. For example, I was actually referred to a client out of Columbus, Ohio. I work with her sister-in-law currently, and I said, I haven't worked with these attorneys in Ohio before, but I'm happy to help you. I don't know Ohio law as well because I've got some clients in Ohio, but there been people that have moved there after getting divorced in Indiana, and got on a call with them and kind of went through everything. And my client told me afterwards that the attorney and the valuation specialist were like, "Who was that guy? How did you meet him? He's great." Typically when we work with financial professionals, they don't have the attitude that he has. And because it's a give and take. We're not going to get everything that we want, in a mediation. And so that was comforting to hear that, our approach is well received, in other markets, just because of the fact that I'm used to working with folks here, and we've got a good working relationship just because we're working with the same folks kind of day in, day out. So that was encouraging to hear that it can still be done in other markets, and it sounds like nobody really in the Columbus market may be doing what we're doing from that aspect.
Well, I think it's very important to note. I do presentations around the country about the CDFA designation, and we're not in competition with attorneys. We're not attorneys. We're not practicing law. But on the other hand, most attorneys don't have the breadth of knowledge of financial instruments and tax that you get when you're functioning as a CDFA professional. So it's, two complementary skills, not competing skills.
Yep, absolutely.
I want to thank you for your time today and telling us a little bit about yourself and your practice. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up the podcast?
No, I just encourage anyone that has a CDFA to fully utilize it. I know there's a lot of CDFAs out there that have the designation but aren't really, I don't think, practicing or utilizing the CDFA credential to its fullest extent. And for anybody that's looking to get it, I would encourage you to go and do the necessary steps to get it, and learn. The IDFA has a lot of resources out there that can help you jumpstart your practice, and there's a huge need out there. There's a void in that area, and if you're looking for something to become an expert in and specialize in, this is still a market that is really underserved.
Yeah, it really is. When you look at the divorce statistics and the number of active CDFA professionals, we could easily double, probably go 10 times the number of CDFA professionals before we were close to saturating the marketplace.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
you're
And
welcome.
our podcast is launched every first Tuesday of the month at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Please join us next month.